Welcome to the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast, a space where we pause long enough to listen, soften, and reconnect so we can move forward with clarity and purpose. I'm your host, Kendra Chapman, mom of triplets, busy professional, caffeine lover, and somebody who is sometimes homesteading, writing, and gearing up for the holidays here in the Western Hemisphere. And so today's conversation is an invitation into courage, change, and self-discovery. In this episode, I'm joined by Mary Garrido, an energy coach and former engineer who shares her powerful journey through life transitions, how moments of uncertainty, fear, and even global pause during COVID became a doorway into deeper alignment and personal growth. We talk about what courage really looks like, not the absence of fear, but the willingness to do the thing that scares you. We explore energy coaching, the role of vulnerability, and how sharing your story, especially out loud, can become a bridge that connects and empowers others. If you're navigating a career shift, standing on the edge of change, or quietly feeling called towards something more, this conversation is just for you. So take a breath. Let's take a deep breath. Let's relax our shoulders, settle in, and let's get started. Mary, I just want to welcome you to the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast, and thank you for joining me today in this conversation, because I think you're at a standing desk now.
I am.
Good for you. So welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, I like standing when I'm talking like this. I find it works better for me.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a good reminder that, we can come together in meeting spaces in different ways, and so why not get a standing desk or stand up once in a while when you're in meetings. Could you just kind of, for our viewers and listeners out there, just kind of check in about what you're doing right now to go slow to go fast?
Okay, well, lots of things, I think. So the big thing that I changed a few years ago was starting my own business, which was about so much more than just starting my own business. But for me, it was a reset around, how do I actually want to be spending my time? Like, I've always been someone that does lots of things. People are like, oh my goodness, how can you do so much? And I got to a point in my life where there was an awful lot going on. I felt really exhausted. It didn't feel like this doing lots of things was really working anymore. And I didn't really know why. I was like, well, it always worked before. And I went through a whole process when COVID happened, I think like a lot of people, where I had a big rethink. And it was so much more then about kind of, okay, but where do I need to go fast and where do I need to go slow? And it's not about doing less. It's about kind of putting my energy where it actually works for me. And once I got all that figured out, which took quite a long time, part of that was creating my own business. So I'm now working for myself. And what that gave me, which was the big one for me at the time, was that freedom, or a certain amount of freedom around how I actually organize my own time, which was just such a deal breaker for me. So sometimes I'm going fast. So the weekend that's coming up, I am leaving for Egypt, somewhere I've never been before. I'm going there for my work. I'm going to fly there, do lots of crazy things, come back. Then I'm flying to London and then I'm coming back. So there's it's a whole lot of fast that's going to happen. And so this week, seeing that coming, I'm kind of going slow. I'm doing some work, but I'm taking the opportunity to pick my daughter up from school a bit earlier, not be crazy rushed mum like I can be sometimes. I've got work to do, but I'm not setting myself a crazy pace. So I think it's all about kind of this fast and slow is about not doing all of either one of them, but it's finding the ups and downs that actually kind of start kind of fitting with how we want to be. Because I like going fast, but I can't do it all the time.
Right. Yeah. It's about pacing yourself. And I like how you kind of allude to the fact that you had a big change in the way that you showed up every day. And definitely COVID was a catalyst for that. But could you just kind of walk us through a little bit of your thinking around that time?
Yeah.
And where you kind of started and then how you've ended up where you are.
Yeah. So I'm an engineer. That's kind of that was what I was trained in. That's the industry I've always worked in. And so I'm from the UK originally. I worked in the UK. I came to France I came here really for a change of lifestyle. I'm really into sports. So I came to the south of France where it's hot and there's a beautiful sea and there's mountains, and I could do triathlon, which is what I was really into at that point in time. And then a few years later, I moved to Switzerland. I did some other things, and then I came back. But I've always been in this kind of, or always had been on this a career path that was closely associated with the degree I did, like what I was always going to do. This was what I was always going to do. And then COVID happened. But before COVID happened, a few years before COVID happened, I met someone who already had kids. So he had 3 kids. Or he has still, as they had. So my now husband had 3 children. So suddenly my life changed in terms of becoming a stepmom overnight. So I went from 0 to 3. And then I got pregnant. I wanted to have a child too. So then we went from 0 to 4. And that's an awful lot of change in quite a short amount of time. And even if I was very happy about that, it just threw all of the normal rules and what I was used to completely out of the window. And of course, I went into it very like, we're going to make this work. It's not the easiest situation, kind of with so much change for me, for them. And so like everything, I just kind of put everything into it. And then, I kind of knew something was off. Like I could feel there's like, why do I not feel happier? Like I've ticked these boxes, the family, the great job. I have a great job that's stable. It's interesting. I'm surrounded by this loving family. Why am I not like, feeling happier about this? Or why do I still feel frustrated? I was noticing how kind of tired and irritable I could be, but we all are sometimes, but in a kind of a bit all the time way. And I just didn't even have time or the energy to kind of stop and think about it. I just knew there was something that was off. So COVID happened. It's like, what on earth are we going to do? This is like the worst thing ever. But what it did do was completely throw off our schedule. I mean, I was still working, but as it turned out, part of my work was actually very strategic. So a lot of the strategic decisions were all just put on hold. So I did actually have more time than before. And we certainly weren't traveling to work or taking the kids to school. And as it turned out, I got this new window of time, and it was in the morning. So first thing in the morning, everyone else was still in bed. I would have an hour, maybe even sometimes 2, which is like amazing. 2 hours to myself. And I would sit outside in the morning. My goodness, it was like, this wondrous thing that has been gifted to me. Finally, it started like clearing some space in my head. And I was like, there's just so many things that seem wrong. And I bought a book. I had bought a book called Be a Free Range Human that had called to me. And I hadn't really sat down and read it at all. Started reading the book, so much in there resonated, and it was lots of things about doing what you're passionate about. Why do we spend so much time in corporate jobs, doing things that we kind of, the job description says we have to do, and maybe it's not us, and what do you really love, and why, when you started work, what were you really looking for anyway? So lots of really big questions. And then I was like, I need to take this whole subject further. I worked with a coach, and I had a massive rethink about what are my priorities? Who am I? And kind of no wonder the way I'm trying to kind of do things now doesn't work anymore. My life's completely different. I'm in my 40s. I'm no longer in my 20s, and my life is completely different. There are the kids. There's I've come so far in my career, but like, do I have to keep doing the same kinds of things? Maybe I can do something different. And that all brought me to, I wanted to get into coaching. I wanted to run my own business. And the real key for me was, feeling like I actually had a bit more decision making over how I spent my time and how I kind of spent my energy, which felt really difficult in the job that I had before.
Yeah.
So that got me to here.
And I love how, and you kind of said it throughout your just explanation of like where your mind was. Like you knew something wasn't right. It was off somehow. You didn't know what it was. You had bought a book. You had it on hold. And then when the time was right and you were ready, you could dive in. And then you started really pulling back the layers and figuring out what your next steps were going to be. Little did you know you were going to be doing all this other stuff that would be very different than where you were before COVID. And I'm sure there's lots of people out there that can resonate with that. And I had a similar experience. I think we all, at some point, we paused. I'm hoping we did during COVID. And we had a positive pause where we could reassess what's important, what we value. And so now that you're on the other side of all of that, talk a little bit about what core energy coaching is. Like, what does that look like? Because I see that that's something that you work with in your coaching with others, and just kind of expand on that a little bit.
With great pleasure. I'm very passionate about this subject. Back to the COVID story. So when I started on that journey, one of the books I read is a book called The Power of Full Engagement. And it's a book that talks about energy, about burnout. It started talking about, at the beginning, about working with sports people, which spoke to me, and about how you actually do training and competition. And it's all about the big events are the competitions, and you expect this sort of high energy, everything gets ready for that. And then there's a period of recovery, and then you train, and then you go back. And we don't expect in sports people to perform at their top all the time. So why do we do it like everywhere else in life? Why in say a corporate job do we expect a sort of high constant performance that we know it doesn't work? But because the context is different, we kind of just change all the rules and behave as if you were machines. And this started speaking to me so much, and I was like, well, this is exactly what's been kind of wrong for me. Like, I just feel like I don't have any energy anymore. So it took me down this road of thinking about my energy differently. And in the book it talks about spiritual, emotional, and physical energy, and kind of putting that into categories and thinking about, okay, well, where is that working for me, where isn't it working for me, was already really, really helpful. And then when I started looking around for coach training, because I wanted to be a coach, I discovered this organization called IPEC, and the whole approach is around something that they call core energy coaching. And I was like, this is already starting to sound like I found my thing. So then I joined that course, and yeah, the whole program is around how you look at your energy and a whole model and framework and assessment. And it just works, and it just resonated so much for me. And I see it working so well with clients, because I think we talk about things like psychology or emotional intelligence, and all of these things are very important and are elements in the end of the same thing. A lot of the time it's just different ways of talking about the same thing, but it needs to kind of make sense to people. And this word energy just speaks to me. And I was like, well, this is it. Like, this is where I was. I had this, like I said, a kind of a good job and a lovely family, and everything was kind of okay. Energy at all. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like, more or less getting the sleep, and I'm kind of doing the sports I did, and tick, 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 not working at all. And then realizing that a lot of it, for me at least, was coming from the spiritual side of things, the fact that my priorities were not really kind of lining up, but seeing that as actually a source of energy, it just made so much sense to me. And then that's what happened. So there I was, feeling really drained, really exhausted. I mean, I didn't quit my job straight away. So the following year, when I started my coach training, I was still in a full-time job. I had so much more energy. I was like, okay, so I've just added a whole load of new things into my life on top of what I was doing before. And I have more energy now than I did before. That doesn't make sense. And yeah, but it does make sense. Because suddenly I was like, okay, I'm doing something I'm passionate about. I'm learning something new. I'm meeting really interesting people. I'm getting excited about what's coming next. Okay, it didn't matter that I was still doing those same hours, getting the same amount of sleep, and so on. So yeah, energy for me it just makes so much sense. And it, as I said, when I work with people, I really see that it makes sense for them too.
Yeah. And I can see you anybody who's watching the YouTube version of this, you can see Mary light up when she talks about this. You can tell the energy changes, it shifts. So yeah, I think if you can prioritize and focus on what you value in your day to day, the work doesn't have to change. It's just how you approach it.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've really seen that because, okay, in my case, I made a lot of, quite big structural changes, but the clients that I work with, mostly none of those kind of external things change. It's the same job, it's the same family, it's the same friends, but the energy that they have once we've been working together just goes completely through the roof. And it's okay, well, yeah, because it's all about what's going on in here, and it's about how you see what's happening. It's about how you're interacting with those people, and then those relationships change. And so even if it's the same people and the same, it all starts shifting, but it's coming from inside, and that energy is really coming from inside, and then you can see it on the outside.
Yeah. So it doesn't sound like you were scared of doing this at all. It didn't bring you any sort of fear. It was coming from a place of joy and positive energy.
Yeah, there was plenty of fear too, though.
Fear? Okay.
Yeah, well, yes and no. So it was kind of easy at the beginning in this kind of COVID bubble of life's not kind of like normal life to just go, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. The coach I worked with was like, quit your job tomorrow, just go. Like, yeah. And then it was like, okay, well, I have a mortgage and responsibilities and so on and so on. I need a slightly more structured plan than this. Yeah, what came up, and that was what's fantastic about being trained as a coach, is you spend a lot of time getting coached. So in that process, it came up a few times, this thing of, well, hang on, I've had this sort of scripted career so far. Like, I've done the things I'm supposed to do, and my salary has kind of gone up, and my responsibilities have gone up, and I have a mortgage, and blah, blah, blah. How can I now do something which just throws all of that kind of into question? And maybe I'll be earning nothing tomorrow, or maybe that was pretty scary. That was really scary. I realized I had quite a lot of, we call them gremlins in coaching. So things around being responsible for myself financially, being scared of what it might mean if I couldn't be. Would I need to be more reliant on my husband than before? I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure that I could always kind of take care of myself. That was actually something very strong. Oh my goodness, it brought up all sorts of things. And that kind of, it went up and down. Sometimes I felt like, yeah, everything's possible. And of course, I had moments of being scared and also realizing how much of my identity was tied up in the job I had. I was like, how can I really start saying I'm a coach? Like, does everyone going to be, what? But you're an engineer. That's not you. Am I going to be credible? And yeah, this sort of feeling that all that time and energy invested in that career path and that degree, and that somehow it was throwing it all away or denying or saying somehow that it wasn't worth anything, and which is completely not true. And I feel like this is just an evolution of everything that I've done. But yeah, for sure, there were lots of doubts that cropped up along the way. But I felt on a much deeper level, I felt like this is definitely the right way to go. And then, there are just these moments of feeling super confident and sometimes getting a bit scared.
Yeah. And I don't know, everybody out there listening and watching, if you've ever felt that way when you've started something new, maybe a new job, or tried something new, or added something to your background as far as a new training, professional development. But I'm going through that right now. I'm shifting from something I've done for my entire career, and now I want to do something different. But like you, Mary, I feel like it's just an evolution. I'm taking everything I've learned and I'm going to add that into my next adventure. But it still can be very scary. Somebody who has an educated mind in engineering, math, science, I'm thinking you're very analytical. You're very detail oriented, and you are taking almost like a leap of faith into this next, this next chapter of your life. So did you start doing, besides working with folks one-on-one maybe, or in group settings, did you do anything else that maybe folks would like to hear about, like maybe a different type of event, of an adventure of some sort, maybe public speaking, or working with different groups of people that you never have had that experience to?
For sure. That's been what's really interesting as well about this journey, is the other things that have come up, either that I've kind of gone looking for or that have just sort of happened naturally. So I'm now actually delivering quite a lot of training. That's part of what I do, which I enjoy. And that's mostly around the sorts of things I talk about in my coaching. But I've ended up teaching a little bit of English to some kids as well. That was a completely unexpected thing too. So that's a little bit of the different things I've been doing. But yes, the other thing that kind of happened by accident, yes and no. So public speaking is definitely one that when people tell you, how do you set up a business and how do you make yourself visible? And so it's on the list. It's definitely on the list. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'd really like to, but like, what am I going to say? I feel like I have lots to say, but how could I even begin to think about packaging that into like a speech, or how do I? So that was kind of floating around on the list of things to do, like coming on podcasts. That was something as well. It took me a while to get to here. And then the really interesting thing that happened last year was that I have a very good friend who is living close to me. She's from the US, and she is part of an academy called BU Brand, and part of her work is all about branding and content and how do we, express who we are in our businesses. And she'd always talk to me a lot about it. And the lady who runs that, she does a conference every year in September in Las Vegas. And so the friend said to me, well, do you want to come? There's like a, buy one, get one free offer. And I was, okay, why not? Why not go from France to Las Vegas? So yeah, I signed up for that, which for me was already a big deal. I hadn't done anything, especially since having my daughter, really, anything that felt that sort of extravagant, or it felt pretty extravagant. So we were signed up for that. And then, I don't know, a month or two, it was quite late. It was in the summer because the conference is in September. See, the lady who runs the event sent out, I'm sure it was on Instagram or an email saying, okay, I've got 2 slots open if anybody wants to come and speak. So as someone that signed up, if you want to speak, here's an invitation. And I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, if I'm going all the way there anyway, like I should at least have a go, because this is an opportunity and it could be very cool standing in front of all those people. I'm not sure if I know what I want to talk about. And yeah. And then it said you had to do an Instagram reel to talk about what you wanted to talk about. And I was like, oh, no. Maybe could I just write it down? That would be like a bit less uncomfortable. But I was like, okay, this feels like a thing you've just got to do. So yeah, so I did my reel and I got picked. I got picked to speak, and then I was like, wow.
And then what?
Now I actually have to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So that was
Ah.
scary.
And the thing that I wanna focus in on is that you had that feeling that you needed to do it. Even though
Yeah.
it scared you, you went ahead and
Yeah.
did it anyway.
And
Yeah.
I even took it further than so at first it was like, okay, I need to talk about something to do with my coaching and what I do and how I work with people,
Mhm.
and that would make sense. And then I don't even know at what point that changed. So yeah, I felt very much that was something I needed to do. And then something else came up. I was like, actually, what I also need to do if I'm having this opportunity, this is also, I need to actually take this much deeper. I'm not just going to talk about the work I do and why I think it's important. I'm going to talk about something that's really about me and about my life experience up to now. And I decided to try to kind of connect all of the dots all the way from a long time ago to now and connect everything I was talking about back to a really traumatic experience I had when I was just 19 and that I had never ever spoken about in any kind of public setting really at all, and which I didn't speak to many people about at all either. But yeah, it's really I'm trying to find like when I kind of knew I needed to do it, and I don't know when it was, but somehow yeah. And I didn't tell anyone. That's the other thing too. So I told my husband, uh, and he was like, "Okay, you really want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not quite sure why, but this just feels like something that I really need to do." So that's what I did. Yeah. So I went from quite scary to like really, really scary.
And you've talked about the gremlins in coaching, and I don't know if that's just negative self-talk or if you would put that more into like egoic mind, like whatever is going on there. But we're
Mm.
going to have our ups and downs. That's what it is to be human. But wow, to put yourself out there like that and then really put yourself out there. How did it
Yeah.
feel after?
So when there were kind of two phases to it. So
Mm.
I mean, I was pretty still very sure I wanted to do it, but pretty terrified when I was actually standing in the room waiting for my turn to go up. And also just thinking nobody is expecting like what I'm actually going to talk about right now. So I did it. Yeah, it felt did it feel good on stage? It did feel good. I mean, it was scary. I was very much in the zone of kind of what I was doing, but it felt good and I could feel, I mean, that's a really interesting thing standing up there is you can feel the energy coming back from people and it was like, whoa, okay, they're really with me. I mean, you could definitely and other people said it to me afterwards, you could have heard a pin drop in that room. It was like, okay, they're here. And that was amazing. I don't think I've had an experience quite like that before. And then when I finished, a kind of big relief. But then, yeah, what was really amazing was so many people then coming up to me afterwards going, my goodness, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for being so vulnerable. The number of people that then told me their own stories about things that had happened to them, the fact that somehow hearing me talk about it made it okay for them to do the same. It somehow makes it safe. It somehow, and I was like, this is just amazing. It's sort of what I guess what I hoped would happen, but I've never had that experience quite like that before. And I was like, wow, if I can do this and think about all the good I can do for all these other people who can maybe release something or talk about something or feel okay about something that's happened to them, can I finally turn this awful thing that happened to me into something positive and kind of creative, not just something I'm kind of dealing with, but something that's actually helping other people? So that felt really amazing. And I was on this kind of high for the next I don't know, a couple of weeks, I guess. And I came home and I was so proud of myself. And then what was really strange and I did not see coming was it took a few weeks, maybe it was 3 or 4 weeks later, maybe a little bit more before I actually saw the video of myself. That was actually really different when I saw it. I mean, it's always a bit like that, seeing yourself. This kind of then, oh my goodness, this inner critic of look where you stumbled over your words, look at that thing that you forgot to say. So that was like a level. And then there was another level that was just all this, I don't know, shame came up, I think, which I again did not see coming at all. I had this just big voice in my head saying, what have you done? How could you possibly stand up there and talk about that? And I could see it and hear it. And I was going, what's this about? I was feeling really good about this and I know why. And so what is this like gremlin coming through? And yeah, it took a bit of coaching to kind of understand that better, I guess, and get comfortable with it. But it's also something I understand more now what's awful about trauma is there's loads of shame that just keeps coming to the surface with it. And even if I was attacked by somebody that's not my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. So why do I have this feeling of shame about it? But I do, and that's what came to the surface. And I feel better about it now. But what it also made me realize was, even if going through that process and having that high and feeling like it was really great, okay, it's actually a very big and quite long cyclic process. So it's something I want to keep doing, but it's not something I can do every day. And it took me a while as well also to get comfortable with going, okay, I've done that. Doesn't mean I now have to just jump into doing that all the time. I don't know exactly where this is going to go, actually. And I'm now kind of comfortable with the fact of saying, okay, I'm going to keep talking about it. But if the feeling comes, and I don't have to kind of have a plan for this, because people say, oh my goodness, now you've got this story out there. You need to do this and you need to do that. And I'm like, well, actually, this is a lot more, this is a lot more complicated than that. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're working through stuff that's going to have you going up and down on that roller coaster. That's a lot of emotional back and forth.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing that thread of every time you kind of go back to that moment of how it felt, what the audience was giving you back is that reinforcement of we needed this. That's the work. That's amazing that you were able to share in that moment.
Yeah. It was a bigger kind of emotional kickback than I was kind of expecting to have. Like I said, I was at least on this high for at least about a month-ish afterwards. I was like, okay. And then, whoa, I did not see all the rest of that coming. But I was like, okay, well, now I know. So yeah, it's something for me to keep working through.
Yeah. And as much or as little as you want to or feel comfortable sharing. I mean, it's amazing to hear that the message was received well in I don't know how intimate a setting it was, a few thousand people, a few hundred people, but still it was people who needed to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I still don't really know what exactly where it came from, that feeling that it was this thing and it was now and it was these people. It was, it was the right place and it was the right time that I'm absolutely confident about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just appreciate you being vulnerable enough and willing enough to share that, because I think, for everybody who's listening and viewing, I think we need to remember that if we choose to be vulnerable, and you do have that control because you decided you were going to share that, and you don't remember exactly when you made that decision, but you decided you were going to share it. You told your husband and you had a plan and you did, and then you saw the aftermath. And so, we have that choice of whether or not we want to be vulnerable when we choose to be, but just know that it may bring up other feelings whenever you decide to do what, messaging you want or don't want to share. Would you take it back? Do you feel like you would do it all over again that way and it was meant to be?
Yeah, no, I feel for, where I was and what I was able to say or not say, and that there was no other way. There was no other way. It was the right way. Yes, I'm just not quite sure what it looks like going forwards. And I really like that you talked about choice. So one of the people I spoke to after the event was someone who, her thing is coaching people to tell their stories. And we had a long conversation, and she's like, "Oh, I'd love to work with you if you want to take this further." I was like, I think I do. I just don't right now. I don't really. Yeah, it's not the right time, and I'm not quite sure where I want to go with it. But what she talked a lot about, which I found really helpful. She was like, "No, the whole point about your story is you get to choose what are the bits and pieces of it. Where do you want to put the boundaries around what that story is?" And then you're completely in the driving seat. And I was like, that's actually really interesting. I think that's part of what I'm still working on, is that it's never felt like that with this story before. So I was attacked. I had some very serious injuries. I nearly died. So for example, whenever I have any kind of medical conversation, I have no choice but to get into it, whether I want to or not. Some of the people I've spoken to have been so insensitive or have just asked really inappropriate questions, and I've just had to kind of put up with that. And I also had to stand up in court and talk about my experience, which was an awful experience. But it's just someone else deciding all the time, what the questions were, what I had to talk about. And I've never felt kind of in control of the story, I guess. And what is interesting about this is like, okay, but no, I do get to choose what's important about this story. This bit and this bit, that's not what I want to talk about. This bit and this bit I do. And that feels more empowering. And that's an amazing thing as well. So trauma, the shame, actually feeling kind of empowered about at least telling the story, I think it's starting to be already kind of part of an amazing process that I can go through, which will really change how I feel about it as well. Yeah. Yeah. Choice is being able to choose what I do and say with it. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's new. So I'm still figuring that out too. But yeah, I do get to choose now.
And what boundaries you want to put up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like
Yeah.
that. And, that's just something, it's just fascinating to be able to put yourself out there. It can be really hard. But the more people who choose to share their story, however that looks for them, I think it's going to help somebody out there. At least one person needs to
Yeah.
hear that.
Yeah. Which is
Yeah.
already amazing. And it was something many years ago a therapist said to me, and I was like, okay, but I'm now starting to see what I can do with it. Was exactly that. She was like, well, the ultimate place to get to in terms of, an experience like this is actually being able
Hmm.
to sort of use it to help or improve things, other people, or
Right.
I was like, whoa, yeah, okay. I mean, that was about 15 years ago. I think I had that conversation. I was like, okay, now I'm actually seeing somewhere where I could maybe do that. And like you say, even if it's one person, that's already one person that's already,
That's right.
their life is that bit easier or more comfortable or better, or they're that much happier. That's fantastic
Hmm.
already. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
And really, with that one person, you change the trajectory of that life and then their future generations. So really, just one is all we have to focus on, which is what I love about coaching. So now that you've kind of gone through that growth process and you're, thinking about what may or may not happen next, are you tackling other adventures? Are you on to something new and different? Like what's in store for you in the next year, would you say?
Yeah. A few different things actually. So a few different things, but I will focus on, what I'm really doing, which is very specific to my business. So the way I work is it's all about energy, and that's what we talked about, and this is what I love. But then I'm kind of realizing that it's not always that easy so it spoke to me immediately. It doesn't necessarily speak to other people straight away, or they need some support in kind of seeing how that's going to help them with where they are. And I thought that I mostly wanted to work with women who are about the same sort of age as me, who are going through a similar phase of life around kind of juggling career and kids and all these wonderful things. And it was this summer, actually, for all sorts of different reasons, I kept speaking to people who were much younger than me. And they were saying, but I would love your help I'm starting out often in like a technical career, like I did. So in a very male dominated environment, we need help. Like, don't you want to help us? And I was like, yeah. I mean, I guess, yeah, of course I could, and I'd love to. And I don't know, again, didn't think I'd necessarily feel relevant so I had a big rethink about the way I'm doing what I'm doing. And yes, what I'm now doing is I've kind of come up with 4 sort of phases I don't like saying life, career, it's all the same thing, different phases in life. And I'm developing a program so people starting out. So it's that kind of, okay, I got the degree and I got that first job and I thought that was going to be like, and now, oh my goodness, I'm actually here. And there's all this other stuff, the environment, the self-doubt, the fact that I feel like maybe I have to work crazy hours. Do I? How do I make myself heard? All those kind of questions. Another whole piece all around coming back to work after maternity leave, that great transition that happens, and how does that work? And then as the kids get older, there's then this sort of crazy juggling phase that we get into, which I'm in. So I have a program for that period too, and then also a program for people who are at a later stage in their life and career. And that was really inspired by a client I've had who is extremely competent. She has a fantastic job. Her kids have sort of flown the nest, and it's been so who am I and what is it actually I want from work? So, I mean, I'm no longer trying to sort of prove something that I'm good at my job, for example. She's extremely competent. She's already in that position. So how do I get something different from my work? What am I looking for? Like a legacy, or is it something about taking my leadership somewhere different, or whatever it might be? And also, who am I? Like my mum role is now rather different. So that's pretty strange. How do I work with that? So I also have a program for kind of that phase. So, and it feels much more aligned. I was like, I've been talking very much about energy and how I do things, and now I want to say, okay, there are these sort of big periods in our life where there are a lot of change and transition, and of course energy can help. How we talk about it and kind of what makes sense for people is going to be different. So yeah, I'm excited to launch those programs and sort of see who wants to come, and how I can show them that energy is just always the answer in the end,
Right.
one way or another.
Well, and like I'm just hearing you're sharing your gifts, and That's amazing because there are people out there that need to see that change is good and it's a process. And coaching, coaches need coaches, and if coaches need coaches, then I think everybody needs a coach at
Yeah.
some point in their life.
Yeah.
And, like we're changing the way that looks and what it means. It's really a mentor, it can be a guide, a mentor, a facilitator. We have different hats, but really, if I could have had somebody when I started off in my career, when I was 21, just kind of guiding me and showing me and telling me, like, this is what, you could think about. Consider this. Imagine the trajectory would have been so different and I would have been able to go faster for sure.
Yeah. And all that kind of heartache and questioning and that could be just so much smoother.
And build healthier habits earlier. But, some of it is trial and error, like sometimes we just have to go through it and realize it. But if you can go through it with somebody who's been there, it's just so much more amazing if you have that guide on the side.
Yeah. And something that popped up when I started thinking about this was who along the way at the start of my career gave me good advice. And often it came from really unexpected places. And if you're open to it and you talk to people, it's amazing what you can pick up. And one of the best pieces of advice I had was from someone who I was working with, who was not my boss, and it's really stuck with me ever since. And there were two bits of advice. One was never be so busy doing what you're doing right now to not be thinking about what you'd like to be doing next. Really good advice. And he also said to me, never do a job and make yourself indispensable, because when you want to move, when you want to change, then you're actually stuck and you don't have any choice anymore. This is fantastic advice. And I remember thinking, gosh, how grateful I am now that I had that advice. Because it is something that I drew on and I remembered. But yeah, that was a conversation over a cup of tea in the back of a factory with someone who I was working with just by chance. Yeah, great advice and support can come from all sorts of places. But yeah, that was very much by chance. Whereas working with a coach or a mentor, you're putting a lot more opportunity to kind of have that advice and support earlier on. So yeah, being a bit more deliberate about it. Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, Mary, I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's just, I feel like a lot of the people that I meet along the way, it's like literally a bump into you in a coffee shop and we're having tea or coffee and discussing life. But, I'm hoping that we've reached somebody out there just to kind of think like, just take a minute, look around you and see if there's anybody out there who might have some sort of wisdom and maybe that you want to share your life experience and your story with somebody else, because we all need to hear from each other. I think we're all connected in some way.
Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation too.
Anything else that you want to share before I let you go?
I think to kind of bring it all together in what we've described, doing scary things is definitely something we should all do. Pushing those boundaries, experimenting. But also being aware, it's like in the story I told, being aware that there will also be surprises that come with that, so that it can be fantastic. And whatever happens, you're going to learn and grow from doing it. But yeah, maybe the learning and growing might be longer or shorter or more complicated than you maybe expect. But it's not a reason to not do it. It's really not a reason to just, make sure you also have that support there. So, when it is a bit difficult, somebody's got your back. But it's the only way to learn and grow. So keep experimenting, keep trying things that are a bit scary. Find out what happens.
That, good things do come out of taking that leap and doing something that scares the what out of you, but it's okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time. So anybody who wants to reach out to Mary for more, we'll have that in the show notes. We'll also be out on YouTube, and just, give it a go. Check it out and follow up and give us some feedback. Let us know how it's going. So if Mary is somebody you want to work with in future, reach out to her, and you can always reach out to me. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today's episode of the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast. I'm so happy you could join us and that you chose to be here with us today when there are so many other podcasts and programs out there that you could be watching on YouTube or other platforms. So thank you for being here. And I invite you to reflect on what stood out for you in this conversation. Maybe it was the reminder that courage grows when we act, even when we're fearful, or that life transitions are not detours, but they're initiations, or perhaps the gentle nudge that your story is just as important and it has the power to inspire someone else. Mary's journey reminds us that self-discovery is ongoing, that support does matter, and that we don't have to navigate change alone. When we allow ourselves to be seen through coaching, community, or sharing your voice, we create space for healing and growth and alignment. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with a friend, a colleague, or someone you know who may be standing on the edge of their own brave next step. And that's how this community grows, one shared story at a time. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for honoring your own journey. As you move into the rest of your week, remember, the light in me honors the light in you. And as you take the next step, let your light shine through. Go slow to go fast, and thanks for listening.